In the heart of the marsh, where nature held its final breath, 5 men rose, not to conquer, but to save a giant drowning between life and death. Fire in Kajangama, a hero among flames. The fire raged violently, thick smoke choking the sky above the outskirts of Kajangama, Malaysia. Amidst the chaos, a small cage stood trembling. Inside, 2 helpless rabbits, trapped with no escape. Enter the boy, young, fearless, and unwavering. Like a scene out of an action film, he climbs a concrete wall, balancing on fragile branches that barely hold his weight. Flames lick the ground only meters away, but his eyes are locked on one goal: save them. With bare hands and borrowed tools, he tears at the metal wires of the cage. The first rabbit bolts to freedom, but the second, terrified, refuses to move. He adjusts, regroups, and tries again, patience battling panic. Through smoke and heat, he guides the rabbit toward safety. A real act of bravery, under fire, literally. Forget superheroes. This child just redefined real-world courage. Altadena on fire, no animal left behind. The wind howled, ash rained down. Wildfire tore through the hills of Altadena, forcing families to flee. But not all ran. Some stayed, for love, not safety. Among the smoke and panic, horse owners loaded trailers at breakneck speed. Ropes were tightened. Voices yelled through choking air as terrified horses were coaxed toward salvation. One woman, resolute and fierce, shouted, air not letting them burn. Horses, panicked and shaking, were led one by one into safety, while their humans risked everything. The fire roared closer, but they stood their ground. This is what humanity looks like at its finest: courage, compassion, and the unshakable resolve to leave no living soul behind. The giant in the marsh, 5 men, 1 life. The deer was massive and drowning, trapped deep in the muck of a marsh, his massive frame sinking with each breath. Only his head remained above water, trembling. 5 rescuers waded in. It took ropes, muscle, and unrelenting effort. Inch by inch, they hauled him out. He collapsed, exhausted, panting, but he was alive. Sometimes, saving one life takes many hands and all of their hearts. Trust after pain. In the heart of the forest, far from the noise of humans, a fox with weary eyes and an injured leg lay among the bushes. A deep wound wrapped around its leg, a cruel gift from a merciless trap, leaving it suspended between life and death. Its breaths were shallow and broken, but its gaze still held light. And then a human hand reached out, a hand that could once again bring pain. But the fox, with eyes full of exhaustion and hope, chose to trust. It could have fled, but it stayed, so the wound could heal. Even after all that pain, it still trusted a human. Maybe not all of them, but at least one. Frozen waters, a dog's brush with death. The ice had broken. The dog was trapped, flailing, freezing, alone in the icy waters of Pfizer Road. His barking pierced the winter silence. His owner, J.M. Sheldon, heard the call and dialed 911 without hesitation. First responders arrived in moments. Dressed in survival gear, they moved with precision, cracking the ice, pushing forward, and pulled the dog free. Cold, soaked, but alive. A powerful reminder: never enter frozen waters alone. Call the pros. Thanks to speed, teamwork, and training, this dog lived to bark another day. The barbed trap, a rescue of the helpless fox. Silence hung in the air until a faint rustle. In a forgotten corner, a fox lay ensnared in barbed wire, legs twisted, strength fading. Time was slipping, but the rescuers arrived. With practiced care, they snipped the cruel wires. The fox, eyes wide with fear, didn't move. They bundled him in a blanket, fed him gently, let him rest. And slowly, Strength returned. In the final shot, we see him, healed, eyes closed, blissfully calm under loving strokes. From terror to peace. From near death to serenity. Rebirth in the fire. The fire howled, trees bent and fell one by one, and the flames surged forward without mercy. In the middle of that burning hell, a firefighter, covered in ash and sweat, ran to save what he could of the forest's soul. Then something caught his eye through the smoke. A small, trembling movement. A baby kangaroo lost in the inferno. Time stopped for a moment. He rushed to the tiny creature, wrapped his arms around its shaking body, and ran, never once looking back. A few seconds later, it might have been too late. But now, in the arms of its rescuer, it had a second chance at life. And it wasn't just a survivor anymore. It had a name, a home. The firefighter smiled and called it, My Little One. Rescue on the edge of the current. A young fawn struggled in the middle of a rushing river. Its legs had no strength left to stand. The water, relentless, tried to carry it away. On the far bank, a family stood in heavy silence, eyes locked on the chaos. The mother had closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. The child had clasped their tiny hands together. And the father ran. Just as the fawn was about to give up, the man plunged into the water. His hands reached it moments before the river could finish its work. That day, faith and courage stood side by side. And life, once again, won. Crying in the cold, abandoned puppies on ice. The sound wasn't loud, but it was haunting. Whimpering, faint cries, barely above the wind. Someone followed the sound, and there they were, newborn puppies, abandoned in the ice, left to die. Their cries were heart-wrenching, pleading for a warmth they had never known. But someone cared enough to act. They were rescued, wrapped, and held close. This is how lives are saved, not just with strength, but with compassion. In the coldest places, the warmest acts shine brightest. The tired swimmer. The river was not calm, but the heart of a little kangaroo was even more restless. It didn't know why it had jumped into the water, only that it couldn't go on much longer. Its legs were giving out. Breathing was getting harder. Just then, a boat appeared in the distance, a shadow of rescue. The people on board approached carefully, but a human touch could bring panic, even death, to an exhausted wild creature. So they chose a gentler path. They didn't lift it aboard. They simply stayed beside it, drifting with it. They moved together. No force, no fear. And the little kangaroo made it back to shore. Not by being taken, but by being accompanied. The fox's second life. From ashes to joy. A gentle breeze danced across a meadow. There, a young fox played joyfully beside a child, healthy, free, and full of life. But his past was not so kind. Once tangled in barbed wire, barely clinging to life, he had looked up at strangers with eyes full of fear and faint hope. They came with gentle hands, wrapped him in warmth, fed him, healed him. Now, in a scene of quiet beauty, he receives a kiss from his rescuer, curled in her arms. From tragedy to triumph, proof that even the smallest lives deserve a second chance. If you enjoyed these thrilling moments, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next adventures. Thank you for watching. See you in the next journey.